For my pick this week, I'll start it early this week on Thursday night football here. I'm gonna lay it here with the Baltimore Ravens minus 7.5 against the Miami Dolphins. And look, last week, I don't think anybody saw what the or saw coming what the Dolphins did against the Atlanta Falcons. But also let's remember, like, let's go back to that game against the Falcons. It was Kirk Cousins in place of Michael Penix Jr. We got that news late in the week, and then I think the day of the game or the night before, uh, their top wide receiver number one, Drake London, out with a hip issue. So I mean that set them back significantly. But you do have to give credit to the Miami Dolphins that they were able to limit Bijan Robinson in that game, where a lot of us, including myself, thought that he was going to go off at a minimum for 125, 150 yards, and it just didn't transpire. And maybe a lot of that has to do with a lot of three and outs that the Falcons had, in the first half of that game, and especially in the second half, where Kirk Cousins, just looked like the shell of himself. But this Ravens team is finally healthy, right? Obviously, the big news is that you get Lamar Jackson back this week. And as I mentioned earlier, that when Mac and I talked about it, that this Ravens team is still favored to win this AFC North division for a reason, right? I know there was a lot of issues on the defensive side for the Baltimore Ravens. They were missing their top cornerbacks, but all those guys are healthy, right? They got Kyle Hamilton back on the defensive side. You get Lamar back. And after a slow start to the season, is starting to look Derrick Henry starting to look like the Derrick Henry that we've seen over the course of his career, more in particular what he was able to do last season for this Baltimore Ravens rushing attack. And let's also not forget, right? The Dolphins defense, especially on the ground, it's still putrid. Look, I know they did a great job of against Bijan last week, but they were also in a game script where they were trailing by multiple possessions and they had to rely on Kirk Cousins to come back. But I mean, going back to where Brees Hall was able to run for 5.79 yards per carry, Rico Dowdle, 8.96 yards per carry on 206 rushing yards. Kamani Vidal, 6.89. And now you're going up against King Henry, who's a very difficult human being to bring down. So I don't expect Lamar to be running the football a lot in this game, but I think they can get big chunk plays just based off of what Derrick Henry's going to bring to this rushing attack and scoring points that way. I do like their team total to go over in this game here as well for the Baltimore Ravens at 30.5. I think they can at least walk into 4 touchdowns and get a field goal in this game here. And this is a stretch where every game matters now for this Baltimore Ravens team, and they have winnable games coming up on their schedule here. Like I mentioned, right? Obviously, the Dolphins here on Thursday night football. They have the mini bye week going up against the Minnesota Vikings in Minnesota in week 10. And then they have the Browns, the Jets, the Bengals, the Steelers, and the Bengals again coming up here. So, if this team is fully healthy, I think that they can go into Miami, where Lamar Jackson is from that area. Zay Flowers is from that area. So I'm sure they have family and friends in the stands there. But just looking at it from an X and O's perspective, I think there's going to be some turnovers here from Tua as well in this game. No Tyreek Hill. Yeah, you have Jalen Waddle, but nobody else on that offense really scares me for this Miami Dolphins team there. So all laid here, I think at minimum, the Ravens win this game by 10 plus points here. So I'm going to lay it minus 7.5 Ravens against the Dolphins on Thursday night football here, Mac.
Don't mind a road team on the road for Thursday if they're a big favorite. We know that home teams generally do better straight up. ATS is kind of balanced out, but there is an advantage for home teams on Thursday, but there's a bigger advantage, much like neutral site games, for bigger favorites. Why? Because you can't scheme that much up. Mike McDaniels can't. In a couple days, it's going to be who has the better Jimmys and Joes, not who has the better X's and O's. With Lamar Jackson back, and even without him, Ravens a lot more talented team. I think they roll here too. I think that's a good pick.
Uncle Dave, any thoughts on the Ravens this week on Thursday night football?
Yeah, I mean, I really tried not to like Baltimore. It's kind of one of those things that who are they? And okay, well, they're healthy now, but does that mean that everybody that was injured and is now healthy is going to play at an elite level, I guess, if you will? So I really tried not to. I mean, I guess you don't have any respect for the Dolphins holding Bijan to 25 yards. So I kind of do.
Sure.
What really surprised me about the Dolphins is they held the ball for 37 minutes. I mean, that's absurd. But you're so right. I mean, their run defense is, I think, 28th in yards per allowed. I really wanted to take Miami. They've only played 3 home games. They won 2 ATS. Baltimore's played 2 road games, lost both. I realized those losses were to Buffalo and Kansas City, but okay, look at their 2 wins over the Bears and over the Browns. I mean, in what world does that qualify someone to be such a prohibitive favorite? I mean, I don't know that it does. I don't know that you're not asking everybody, including Lamar, who's had a bad ankle, so maybe he's not going to be 100%. Maybe he's less inclined to take off. Um, I'm I'm not going to I'm not going to I'm not going to agree with you, but I'm not going to wholeheartedly disagree with you. Um, you know, I can't bet that the Ravens getting everybody back just makes them instant AFC contenders anymore. They're 30th defensively in sack percentage, and I think when Tua has time to throw, he doesn't suck. Let's put it that way. So I would be inclined to take the points. That was only my rationale to give the listeners maybe a different perspective, but not going to. I'm not going to go too far out on that limb, guys.
All right, so there it is for this week here. Ravens laying the points. We've got the Texans also laying the points against the Broncos, and then the Colts laying it on -3 against the Pittsburgh Steelers.